Hey there! It's Champ Movie Recap here. Watch out. And take care. This spooky tale begins in a lake house where a girl named Teresa is sitting by the water listening to music. Suddenly a man named Caleb appears behind her, causing her to jump in surprise. Caleb starts making fun of her and Teresa becomes angry and suggests he go check on his girlfriend Jessica who has been feeling sick, but Caleb responds that he has already given her medicine and she is resting, so there is no need to panic. Teresa enters the cabin and notices Jessica sleeping in the bed. Teresa takes a seat in a nearby chair and quietly starts to read the gothic classic Wuthering Heights. Suddenly Jessica begins to recite lines from the book in a distorted voice and Teresa is startled by seeing her sitting in the bed. A few moments later Jessica stumbles to the ground and Teresa rushes to check on her friend, but out of nowhere, a possessed Jessica rips Teresa's scalp from her head. Despite her injuries, Teresa crawls towards the dock to alert Caleb of the gruesome incident, who is shocked to see her state. Jessica grabs the drone and cuts her own face with it before plummeting into the water. Caleb is perplexed by the turn of events and jumps into the lake to her rescue, but he ends up being mutilated underwater. Now Jessica throws his dismembered head towards Teresa before emerging ominously from the depths of the lake. Next the scene transitions to a day earlier, revealing the event that led up to this event. We see a woman named Beth at a nightclub, with the band she works with in the bathroom. She anxiously takes a pregnancy test and it comes back positive. She is clearly really worried about the result. Beth decides to visit her sister Ellie for advice. Elsewhere we see Ellie, who lives in an old apartment in Los Angeles. She works as a tattoo artist and lives with her 3 children, Danny, an aspiring DJ, Bridget, who is a sensible daughter, and the youngest one, Cassie, just then from her neighbor Jake, who has a crush on her. However, she declines his invitation to see A Nightmare on Elm Street. Soon after, Beth arrives at Ellie's place and it turns out that the sisters are estranged and have a troubled relationship. Beth hands out G to give everyone, but when she takes out a gift for their father they all seem upset. Ellie then sends her 3 children out to buy pizza and reveals to her sister that she's been separated from her husband for 7 months ago. Beth is taken back by this and asks Ellie why she didn't inform her sooner. Ellie replies that she had left her messages twice but received no response. Now Beth realizes her mistake and apologizes to her sister, but Ellie is still enraged. Meanwhile, as the kids are returning with pizza, a tremendous earthquake hits the area, leaving a sinkhole in the parking lot, and once the ground stops shaking, Danny explores the hole and discovers an attic inside. He notices several holy relics guarding specific items such as the Book of the Dead. He decides to take the book back to the apartment, believing that their mother can sell it. Bridget is against this plan and claims that their mother will not cash something he stole, but Danny is adamant. On top of that, he also grabs some of the vinyl records he finds with the book. Meanwhile, back at the apartment, Ellie is concerned about her kids and almost goes off with her neighbor Gabriel to find them. However, the kids soon return and Ellie embraces them tightly, feeling relieved that they are safe now. Danny and Bridget enter the room, and while examining the book, Danny cuts his hand and spills some of his blood on it, which causes the book to open. They come across some horrifying pictures in it, which scares Bridget and causes her to close the book. She tells Danny that she doesn't like it and that he needs to put it back right now. However, after she leaves, Danny plays the records which mention the terrible potential of the book as dictated by the priests. These priests went against the church to study it but suffered the consequences that came with it. Now Danny becomes fearful and tries to stop the record, but it continues to play, and as he watches in terror, the pages of the book begin to turn on their own. Meanwhile, as Ellie returns to the elevator carrying her belongings, we notice a sinister force approaching their building, and just when she steps outside of the elevator, Ellie is attacked by an invisible demon and the elevator begins to plummet, causing her to pass out. When she finally regains consciousness, she feels a sharp pain in her head and cries for help while attempting to escape. However, the unseen demon starts tormenting her, binding her with the elevator wires in a brutal manner. To add to the horror, the electricity suddenly cuts out and Bridget informs Beth that it appears to be a power outage affecting only their building. As Danny investigates the fuse box and Bridget lights candles, Ellie arrives at the apartment possessed by a demonic force. She goes into the kitchen, turns on the gas and starts throwing eggs into a frying pan, some of which are filled with blood. His family is horrified by this sight and Beth tries to understand what is happening, but Ellie begins behaving erratically and talks about tearing her children apart and climbing into them. Suddenly Ellie begins vomiting violently and collapses on the floor, which frames the children for a brief moment. The real Ellie reappears and informs Beth that a demon has abducted her and begs her to save her children. She immediately collapses after this, and after checking her vitals the family realizes Ellie has passed away. After that, Danny and Beth try to take Ellie to the hospital, but they discover that the elevator is malfunctioning to help them. Beth turns to her neighbors Gabriel and Mr. Fonda, who help in putting Ellie to bed. While Mr. Fonda goes to seek help, Beth confesses her guilt about her relationship with Ellie. Suddenly a voicemail from Ellie plays on her phone, claiming that she is burning, and when Beth looks back at Ellie, she sees a fly in her eye and Ellie revives with a blink. Just then the kids arrive and they discover that their mother is still alive. Beth informs them that she is burning, so they try to place her in a bathtub filled with cold water. Suddenly Ellie rolls her eyes and jumps back up against the wall, which horrifies her family. Bridget quickly takes Cassie away and almost immediately, Ellie crawls up the wall and lets out a piercing scream that Gabriel and Mr. Fonda hear outside the bathroom. Mirrors are also smashed as a result of this and she falls silent for a moment, before falling back into the bathtub, but soon after she emerges from the bathtub. Danny calls for her mother. She responds that his mother is now with maggots. Next Ellie comes out of the bathroom with a piece of sharp glass and tries to attack Beth. During the struggle the glass pierces into Beth's hand as she tries to defend herself. Bridget intervenes and pleads with her mother to stop, causing Ellie to redirect her aggression toward herself. She wounds Bridget's cheek with a tattoo pen and attempts to lick it, but Danny uses a chair to knock her down, causing her to fall into a dark room. Following that, Gabriel arrives and Ellie quickly moves to attack him. Eventually they both leave the apartment and Ellie bites his eye out before throwing her down. Seeing this, Beth locks her out and Ellie continues to pound her head on the door. She calms down after a while, but Beth notices from the peephole that Ellie is chasing Jake and mercilessly killing him. Gabriel suddenly stands up and begs for help, but Ellie arrives and digs his throat as well. Now Mr. Fonda shoots Ellie with his gun, but she strikes him and eventually mutilates him. Later Bridget asks Danny whether he believes his mother resembles the images in the book. However, Danny shifts the blame, and a physical altercation between the two ensues. Beth intervenes to defuse the situation. Danny says he wants to show her something. He presents the book and discloses all the details. Meanwhile, Bridget notices that her wound is changing color and becoming darker. Furthermore, she panics when black blood starts dripping from her face. Immediately she attempts to rinse it off, terrifies her. Meanwhile, Cassie hears her, but instead she ends up vomiting an enormous swarm of insects. His mother started singing a song and proceeds to follow the voice. Ellie eventually persuades Cassie to unlock the door, and as soon as she does, Ellie grabs her by the throat. However, Beth and Danny come to her aid and Beth manages to lock the door again. They soon hear some noises coming from the kitchen, and when Beth walks inside, she sees Bridget huddled on the kitchen counter. She notices Bridget gnawing on a wine glass, who then laughs and spits in her face, causing Beth to stagger backward. Now Bridget crawls towards her and wounds her leg with a cheese grater, but Beth manages to knock her down. She then attacks Cassie, but Cassie unintentionally impales her with the sharp point of the rod. Now believing she is dead, Danny binds Bridget to the bed and feels guilty for being responsible for the entire disaster. Afterward, Danny presents Beth with the book and vinyl albums that he believes are the cause of the chaos. Beth then isolates herself in a room to listen to the recordings. While listening, she hears the priest discussing how he had to eliminate his possessed colleagues as he found no other means to stop them except to dismember them entirely. Moments after, Bridget gets up and walks out of the room, hoping to kill Cassie once and for all. Danny shoves Cassie to safety and stabs Bridget to protect his sister, but Bridget retaliates by taking out the knife and stabbing his hand, before puking blood all over his face. She then accuses him of ignoring her request to return the book. Danny, in a desperate attempt, somehow manages to set Bridget on fire, but he suffers severe injuries in the process. Meantime, dead Ellie sneaks into the apartment through the air vents and attacks Beth once more. When Beth walks out of the room, she stumbles upon injured Danny and Cassie hiding beneath the table, with Danny apologizing to Cassie before taking his last breath. While Ellie pinned Beth down, she discovers that Beth is pregnant and nearly rips her apart. Luckily, Cassie manages to slide a pair of scissors toward Beth, allowing her to stab Ellie in the nose. Following this, Beth and Cassie make a desperate run to the elevator in order to flee the apartment. However, the elevator is broken and the steps to the lower floor have collapsed. Beth immediately snatches the shotgun from Mr. Fonda's grip, and we see Ellie removing scissors from her nose. Now, just when Beth is about to blow up the fire escape door, Ellie attacks them, prompting Beth to shoot her leg. Despite this, Ellie gets up and tells Cassie that Beth is trying to separate her from her mother. Cassie, on the other hand, says that she knows the woman is no longer her mother. After that, Beth shoots Ellie's arm off as well, but the dead neighbors now rise as deadites. Unable to find a way out, Beth puts Cassie inside the elevator and gets confined there. The elevator begins to fill with blood, and all deadites begin to emerge with Ellie by tearing through her limbs, forming a hive body. At this point, the elevator becomes completely full of blood and the weight leads it to tumble to the ground floor. As the blood-filled elevator doors open, Beth anxiously tries to wake up unconscious Cassie and is relieved to see her alive. Luckily Cassie had gotten the car keys before rushing out of the apartment, so now the two try to escape by driving away. Moments later the deadite arrives at the parking lot and Beth realizes the car is stuck in the ground. The two manage to flee by crossing under the closing park gate, but the deadite drags Cassie with Deadeye tries to sever Cassie's head with a chainsaw. Beth intervenes just in time, following that it turns its attention to Beth trying to grind her with a massive crusher, attached to a construction vehicle. Fortunately Cassie manages to save Beth just in time by turning off the machine. Amidst the chaos Beth grabs the chainsaw and orders Cassie to restart the grinder. She slashes at the deadite until each piece of flesh is destroyed. Ellie's detached head tries to manipulate Beth but knowing that her sister has passed away, she kicks it into the machine instantly killing her. Now Cassie sobs over the death of her family but Beth confronts her and leads her out of the building. The next day we see another resident of the building, Jessica, whom we saw at the start of the movie. She's getting ready to leave for her vacation at the lake house. She is about to drive away but notices the traces of yesterday night's tragedy in the parking lot. The demon then picks her as the new host and the film concludes with Jessica screaming at the top of her lungs as a mysterious entity attacks her. Please make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications, so you can watch more videos like this. Thank you for watching.